Fantasy Springs at Tokyo DisneySea is home to Peter Pan's Neverland, Frozen Kingdom, and Rapunzel's Forest. But there's also a fourth mini-land in Fantasy Springs that nobody talks about, and it's probably the best one of them all. Whilst there are no rides there, the area itself feels like an attraction in its own right, and after visiting a bunch of times now, this is always the area of Fantasy Springs that I'm most excited to go back to, and it's where I see other people having the most fun. Hello from Tokyo, I'm Jordan with 8-Bit Theme Park Japan. Whether you're planning a trip soon to Tokyo Disney Resort or you just want to learn more about this one-of-a-kind Disney resort, I'm sure you'll enjoy my weekly Tokyo Disney videos, so make sure you subscribe if you don't want to miss the next one. Ever since Fantasy Springs was a piece of concept art and a big pile of dirt, I've always been super curious about what the stuff that isn't Peter Pan, Frozen, and Rapunzel was going to be. I felt like they had this wonderful opportunity to do something very different, to really give the expansion its own identity, and to help it to fit in with a theme park which has some of the greatest areas in any theme park in the world. Whilst a lot of people thought that this was sort of Tokyo DisneySea's take on Fantasyland, which I guess it kind of is, I knew that that kind of level of area storytelling was not gonna cut it for DisneySea, and it seems like the Imagineers knew that as well, because they very quickly got to work on telling a story that would somehow link these areas together. The story's absolutely insane, but they did try and come up with a story. And to be fair to Imagineering, the story wouldn't have been anywhere near as ridiculous if they didn't have to justify there being this huge hotel that's visible from most of the land. Taken from the Tokyo Disney Resort official website, once upon a time in a land far away, there was a magical spring where a spirit lived. Or sprit, I've just realized there's a typo on this page. While the spirit fed beautiful gardens, she was curious and flowed great distances where she encountered enchanted stories. Even today, should you follow the water flowing from the spring's source, you would come to fabled kingdoms found in storybook tales. This doesn't really explain what the area is, like, at all, but luckily the story description for the Fantasy Springs Hotel elaborates on this a little bit, whilst also having exactly the same typo. This adds, upon returning home, the spirit used her powers to sculpt stone, branch, and bank into intricate shapes resembling those she met. As she bubbled and sparkled in pools, fountains, and waterfalls, the spirit often sang melodies discovered on her many journeys. It then goes on to explain why there's this big hideous hotel in the middle of it, which I've already talked about in another video, so I'm not going to get into that right now. But yeah, ever since this backstory has dropped, there's been this really glaring, strange quality to it in that you're not actually going to Neverland, and you're not actually going to Arendelle, and you're not actually going to Rapunzel's Forest. You're going to recreations of those places, canonically in story, which is crazy because a theme park is a recreation of those places actually in reality. So it's like a theme park in the story of the theme park. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. The reason I bring all of this up now is because when you're in Peter Pan's Neverland, clearly the Imagineers who designed that area of the expansion intended for you to feel like you're in the real Neverland. I mean, hey, we go on the ride and we see all of those characters, so they're the real characters, right? There is this weird fan theory going around that they're all like husks or that these spirit has created, so they're not the actual characters, but that's obviously taking this a bit too far. Likewise, in Arendelle, you're supposed to be in Arendelle, clearly. And in Rapunzel's Forest, you're supposed to be in Rapunzel's Forest. So what was the point in telling this story other than to justify having the big ugly hotel? Well, yes, they wanted to justify the big ugly hotel, and yes, they also wanted to justify having a single land that brings together these disparate places from completely different stories. But they couldn't just do all of this through a paragraph on the website, right? They have to have something in the area that kind of sort of tells this story. And I'm very glad that they left some areas available to do this. But it wasn't always the case. I think we always had this entrance rockwork that would have been the entrance to Fantasy Springs from the theme park side. But as for the hotel side, we can see in this early artwork that the rockwork that will be there if you venture into Fantasy Springs and look at the hotel wasn't initially planned. I think they thought that the hotel would be pretty enough to stand up on its own legs and to be a visual attraction in its own right. And then OLC saw the hotel after it was built, said, oh dear, and allocated an enormous amount of money and an extra year and a half to fixing, yes, Fantasy Springs and some areas of that, but mainly the hotel and the surrounding area. And I am so glad that they did, because they didn't fix the hotel. The hotel's not good, but they did fix the surrounding area, and they made it an absolute joy to be around. So I want to take you around all of these different rockworks and just give you a full rundown of everything there is there. There's a lot of hidden secrets hidden throughout there, and I just want to kind of gush about how wonderful this area is. Now, I'm a big fan of the Kingdom Hearts game series, so I am very familiar with music being by far the best part of an experience. And whilst I'm not saying that it is the best part of this, because there's a lot going for it, the soundtrack here is just gorgeous. It's so good. And it pulls off a bit of a magic trick that I have never seen in any theme park before. And I mean, not to brag, but I've been to every Disney park. I've been to every Universal Park until they built Beijing, and I've been to a lot of other theme parks as well. And this, I just think it's absolute genius. I sort of describe it as it's like a parade, but instead of the parade moving, you move. What are you talking about, Jordan? Well, this is what I'm talking about. There is a common soundtrack, like a sound bed. There's a song that's playing throughout the entire area. But as you get closer to each of the different fountains, you'll hear the little motifs of the films represented in the rockwork, seamlessly blended into the music. Similarly to how if you watch the electrical parade at Tokyo Disneyland, there's the common theme, Baroque Hoedown, we all know it, we all love it, but then as each float goes by, you'll hear different melodies and things from the movies get woven into it. This area is a joy to explore anyway, but that just really adds this extra detail that means something that I was desperately hoping when we first got this description saying that the spirits, if you listen carefully, you can hear the spirits singing melodies that they heard on their travels. That yes, this is an area that you can explore not only with your eyes, but also with your ears. It's so much fun. Now, there's something a little bit strange because the area Magical Springs, as it's known, is this area that's surrounding the hotel, but there's also the rockwork on the other side of Fantasy Springs when you enter it from DisneySea. And to me, despite these both being in very different areas, they're all the same sort of thing. This is the Fantasy Springs area of Fantasy Springs. This is where that story of the spirits creating storybook tales from rock and trees and, what do they say, branch and bark. This is where that actually is told. So we're going to start from where most people will first encounter Fantasy Springs, entering from DisneySea. It's very strange still now that in this little corner that used to just be a small gate is now this path into a whole new area. But right in between Jasmine's Flying Carpets of Arabian Coast and Raging Spirits of Lost River Delta, we see this pathway, and as you snake around this bend, you'll see a couple of stalls, and then you see this huge rock tunnelway, which not only serves as a grand entrance to Fantasy Springs, but it also does an incredible job of hiding a road that actually travels over you as you walk under here. Yeah, pretty impressive. Let's start over at the left because we can see Peter Pan, and a common motif with a lot of this rockwork is just how clever they've been with incorporating different types of rock, different types of plants, and then the lighting as well at nighttime. Something I really think is cool about the Peter Pan one is the red feather that we normally see in his cap is portrayed, but as a sort of bunch of red flowers that have emerged naturally there. They did such an incredible job with all of this of making it look natural, but also unmistakably the characters that they're supposed to be. And every single one of these sculpts is so brilliant to look at. They so perfectly convey not only the characters, but also the characters' emotions, whilst, as I said, still feeling like they could kind of sort of be spawned from rock. Naturally. Oh, I just love it. Another thing I love here is just below Peter Pan in the negative space, we can see Tinkerbell, and there's this sort of gold leaf that follows her, portraying the pixie dust. But again, this could be kind of moss, this could be some Some shiny gold stone that's being somehow rubbed through there. Super cool, I love it. We also get some kinetic energy from the waterfall sprinkling down there. I looked for a while trying to find something kind of behind the waterfalls or amongst there, but there isn't really. And I'm kind of glad for this. When I first started seeing this rockwork and the artwork for the rockwork, I thought we were going to get something similar to the Tree of Life in Animal Kingdom. I thought this was going to be absolutely chock full of Disney characters, and you could spend hours just looking at like one area of it and trying to discover all the different Disney characters in there. That's not what they've done. What they've done is they've given every film its own separate area. So it's a little bit more cohesive, and you can just kind of stand there and enjoy it. You don't feel like it's a puzzle that you have to solve. You go there, you see the character, and you can just admire how beautiful it all is. I really like it. Right next to Peter Pan in what now is between the entrance and exit of Fantasy Springs, but at some point will just be the center of these two pathways that both serve as entrances and exits to Fantasy Springs. We can see Frozen and we can see Anna and Elsa stood there in the middle. Again, their expressions are brilliant. They just look so great. Another detail that I love here is that they've used this white rock, this lighter rock, to sort of portray snow, which is so perfectly placed. And then what's great is as you get closer to this, you see Anna and Elsa from the distance, and then what emerges as you get closer is behind the rock in the foreground is actually Olaf. And those three twigs that sort of act as his hair in the movie, well, they can just be sticks here, right? They can be twigs that are sort of growing from the rockwork. Moving across then to the right side where we can see Rapunzel. So clearly these three sculptures portray the three major lands inside Fantasy Springs. I'm not getting any awards for figuring that one out. What I do quite like is that Peter Pan's on the left, which is where you'll see Peter Pan's Neverland. The Frozen sisters are in the middle, which if you follow the center path through, you'll eventually get to Frozen. And Rapunzel is on the right, which is where Rapunzel's forest is as soon as you get in. Again, Rapunzel's depicted beautifully here. I love her flowing hair through the rock. I love the little Pascal. And then a wonderful hidden detail here is that the flower that, if you remember in the movie, there's this yellow flower that is what gives Rapunzel her powers. And we can see that flower just growing in solitude. We can see the flower growing in the middle, which I think is just a gorgeous touch. I love that they've incorporated, again, these natural elements that just serve as wonderful details, but also make perfect sense. Like, why wouldn't there be a flower growing there? Of course there could be. As we go through the tunnel, I was hoping the tunnel would kind of have some tricks of its own. It does not. It's just a tunnel. And right now, it has an even bigger problem because it's just constantly full of people waiting for their Fantasy Springs entrance time to clock around. I really hope this system gets ditched soon. I'm hoping once they get Halloween and Christmas out of the way, the busier seasons, when January rocks round, which is typically a quieter time, they're just not going to need it. And to be perfectly honest, they don't need it right now. But hopefully by then they'll admit that they don't need it. Anyway, once you get in, if you turn around to look at the tunnels that you've just been through, now in the center, you'll see this gorgeous depiction of Pocahontas. And you know, with the way that Disney sort of tiptoe around the more problematic movie franchises and things, I was quite surprised to see Pocahontas here, but I think they've done a gorgeous job of depicting her. And in this natural paradise, it's a perfect fit to have her in there. Extra points if you spot Miko over there at the front. And what you might not be able to fully appreciate from looking at it on screen is that this is huge. Like, these are all huge. But this, I'm just amazed that they gave this much space to her. It's really, really cool. If you follow the rockwork over towards what's now the left, looking at it this way, at first, if you're anything like me, you'll notice, oh, it's a Disney bunny. That's cute. I wonder, is that just a generic bunny? And then you realize, oh no, that's Thumper. And next to him is Flower. And Thumper's pointing at something. What's he pointing at? Oh! And we can see this lovely depiction of Bambi with his mother. My daughter delighted in announcing when we saw this that, but Bambi's mum's dead. No, she's not. She's right there. She looks fine. Everything's fine. Moving on. I love the tranquility of this one. I love that they've given it space. I love that they're kind of tucked away in this cave. A wonderful, subtle detail that this is sort of the Disney difference, you know, this is them going the extra mile, is that you can see stalactites that have formed from the ceiling. And how do stalactites form? Well, it's when moisture drips through the ceiling of a cave, and those water droplets eventually become limescale and whatnot, and they create these rock formations. Well, you can see these tiny, subtle drips of water coming through there. I'm not sure exactly how they do it, but it's so convincing. It looks so natural, it looks so real, and oh, it's just great. I love these details. This is what Disney parks are all about. And this is what DisneySea is all about, the details, and this is why I will defend Fantasy Springs being in DisneySea until my dying breath. Although hopefully it doesn't come as soon as Bambi's mums did. Moving on. So that's all of the rockwork that's part of this giant cave formation at the front of the area. Let's get through and look at the ones at the back, because I think this is where it really becomes like an area. What we just looked at is a big piece of rock, but this is where it's like an area that you actually get to explore. This is what I believe is an attraction. This is a walkthrough attraction, but with paths that are wide enough that mean that you don't need to have a little entrance. You can just let people wander through it and explore it freely. But before we get onto that, if you're enjoying this video, please do consider subscribing so you don't miss future Tokyo Disney videos. I upload them every single week. And if you like these videos so much that you want to help support me and the channel, please consider donating to Patreon. You can find that in the description below or the QR code on screen right now. You get lots of perks, including early access to videos. A huge thank you to everyone who supports me there. It really helps me a lot. Okay, so now we're in what is probably better known as the Magical Springs area. Like I said, the other one is kind of the entrance of Fantasy Springs. Now we're in the Magical Springs. And I'm going to start with one that's a little bit strange. I did not expect to see this in here. And it's wonderful, but it's also kind of a problem for the rest of DisneySea. I'll explain. Look at this gorgeous depiction of Ariel. Look how elated she looks. Look how free she looks. The way that the water flows up behind her. We can also see Flounder and Scuttle and Sebastian carved into the rock. But I just adore the expression on her face. It's like pure joy. Not to mention the way that they get these red and green hues into the rock, whilst again, looking, it's like not quite natural, but it almost is. It's close enough. It looks like a real life enchanted forest. It looks like a real life enchanted spring, if you will, a fantastical spring, if you will permit me in saying so. I feel like the colors are so perfectly dialed in that they kind of could maybe exist in the natural world, but they also just pop and make this all look magical. So why is this a problem, Jordan? You've just talked about how great it is. It is great. That's the problem, because we have a whole area for Ariel. We have Mermaid Lagoon that's been in DisneySea since 2001, since the park opened. And guess what they have there? A statue of Ariel. And honestly, after you've been in Fantasy Springs and you've seen this, when you go into Mermaid Lagoon and see the old one, it kind of doesn't look very good anymore. It's just weird that there's two of them in totally different areas of the park. But hey, this is Tokyo Disney Resort. Over at Tokyo Disneyland, you've got Stitch in Tomorrowland and Fantasyland and Adventureland. So whatever. I can understand why they were like, we have to put Ariel in the park that's all about water. But that's why she's already in the park about water. Couldn't you have given this area to someone else? Any other character? No? Okay, fine. Let's get on with it. Next one, I think, is the one that the most people miss because it's sort of tucked away in the corner. And from a distance, it kind of looks like rocks. Like, you have to really get in there to see what's going on. This is the Alice in Wonderland section, and this actually has, you're kind of flanked on both sides by some Alice in Wonderland rock work. On the left, you'll see Alice in the rock, and also you can see the caterpillar with smoke coming from his pipe, of course. Just, oh, so good, so good. I love all the kinetic energy to all of this. It's so, so well done. And then on the other side is the more puzzle aspect of Magical Springs, is the can you spot it aspect. I love bringing people here and saying, can you find the character here? Because this one takes a while. You can maybe spot the tail at the back, but then this one is sort of in the negative space of the water itself. You have to look down on it to see the Cheshire Cat's grinning face. And what a perfect representation of this character that sort of appears out of nowhere and disappears before he's finished a thought. This being a character that is mischievously hiding in plain sight is just brilliant. So yeah, if/when you come to Fantasy Springs, make sure you walk around here. Make sure you see all of this stuff because it's all so, so good. This next one is probably the one that's in the most photos. It's the main mouse himself. And this is where actually we see, going back to that artwork from earlier, this was supposed to just be the hotel. This wasn't here. And then they increased the budget and they added a bunch of time to the schedule, and now we have this, and I love it. I love the whirlpool swirling around in the bottom. I love that we've got the main mouse taking pride of place right in the center. I love that all the brooms, buckets will start to overflow every now and then. I love the way that Mickey's hands summon up tides of water that spray up from the rock, that again is in a way that like couldn't really happen in the natural world, but it doesn't feel fake in any way. It feels like it logistically makes sense. Oh, this area is so good. Special shout out to the Fantasy Springs Hotel balcony over there, where the best thing about it is that you can see all of this. Okay, we've got one more to look at, and this is sort of the big one. This is weirdly kind of the weenie of Fantasy Springs if you are lucky or unlucky enough to be coming in from the Fantasy Springs Hotel entrance. The first thing you'll see is in the foreground you have some smaller fountains, but in the back you can see this big piece of rockwork, which is actually the back of Arendelle, which is all toilets. So all of this rockwork is just the back of toilets, and all of Arendelle is the front of toilets. But anyway, I've moaned about Arendelle just being toilets in the last video. I'm not going to go on about it here. Now, I said that they've given separate spaces to all the different films, and they absolutely have, but this is sort of one big one that's split into 3 different films, 3 different sections. If you're coming in from the left, the first thing you'll see is this awesome depiction of Maleficent in her dragon form. This is one of the 2 only villain representations in the Magical Springs. The other one is what flanks this whole section on the far right of the side, but we'll get to that in a second. But again, perfect sculpt, the darker rockwork, it looks so dark, but it still looks natural. The first thing you'll notice is the dragon's face, and then you start to realize, oh, sprawled out around it are actually the dragon's wings, and then you start to see smoke coming from its nose, and at nighttime the lighting just looks awesome. And this is not the only depiction of Sleeping Beauty. This is just the start of it. As we follow across towards the right, we'll see Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Again, you have to try and find these ones. They're not just right there in front of you. And then we see the big piece with Aurora dancing with Prince Philip. Moving along in the center of this trio section, we see Jack Jack and Guz. So of course, the next thing we're gonna see is Cinderella. I love the way that the water flows over her dress. Sort of like, it reminds me of the transformation scene when she gets her dress and it's all kind of sparkly and magical. It's like the water is kind of depicting the magic of that transformation scene. But then we can see this cascade waterfall next to her, which kind of sort of looks like steps, doesn't it? And then, oh, we can see the glass slipper on there. This is probably the biggest liberty. Like, yeah, I guess that could be like a crystal that's formed perfectly in the shape of a slipper on the middle of a waterway. I don't think that happens, but it's magic. Who cares? It's a wonderful detail, and it's yet another one of those things where one of your group gets the satisfaction of saying, oh, look, and there's her slipper, and everyone else says, oh, yeah, it is. Thankfully, there's no villain depiction for Cinderella, but we move along to Snow White, and we can see the magic mirror. And this is one that they teased in the early artwork, and it's easy to see why. It shows how creative and how kind of flexible they are with the rock stuff. Like, it's not just sculptures and water fountains. The way that this is hidden behind not only a waterfall, but also a screen of mist. And let me tell you, they do not play around with this mist. There's a lot of times when you walk past this area and the entire pathway is full of mist and nobody can see anything. But I love that. I love, again, that you have to really try to find it. And speaking of having to try to find things, the very last character we're going to talk about, Snow White herself, where is she? Well, you know, like when we saw the Cheshire Cat earlier and it kind of used the negative space of the pool itself? If you look straight down, there you can see a sideways portrait silhouette of Snow White's face. I'm really impressed that they were willing to hide this one so well. I think so many people must miss this, but that's the joy of Magical Springs, is this feeling of discovery, is this feeling of exploration. And that's what DisneySea is all about, and that is why Fantasy Springs fits, I won't say perfectly, but fits into DisneySea. It's what this park needed. It stands up to the level set by the park itself. Is it as good as Mysterious Island? No, nothing's as good as Mysterious Island, but it's very, very good. It gives the park some excellent family rides. It gives the park some areas that younger kids and families can all enjoy, and it just adds some extra rides and some extra capacity to this park that has always had a problem with people swarming to the biggest rides just having the biggest queues all day. I am so glad DisneySea has Fantasy Springs. I'm so glad that Tokyo Disney Resort has this extra area, as not only is it a gorgeous area to be in and explore, but it also has some amazing rides, maybe the best ride at Tokyo Disney Resort in Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey. If you want to learn all about that and the Frozen area of Fantasy Springs, check out this video.